Hey guys, insight number 2. We're in Alma 23 to 29. For insight number 2, we're going to look at chapters 24 and 25. Similar type things, let me just sandwich them together. Okay, so these two chapters we see the Anti-Nephi-Lehis, that's what they're calling themselves now. They bury their weapons of war. They remove their temptation in an effort to overcome sin. Now, it's a great read about why they do this and walking through that they and there's some wonderful imagery in here that I like verse 16. It says that they did bury them deep in the earth that they may be kept bright as a testimony that we have never used them. So when you've got a brand new sword, it's all shiny and bright and you've never used it, it doesn't have any oxidization on it from any blood that you've stabbed someone with. So they wanted to keep them bright, so they buried them deep in the earth as a testimony, a commitment to God and Jesus Christ that they were never used, that they were never going to use them. They dig them so deep down they weren't going to dig them up again. There's some lovely artwork in the Come Follow Me manual, actually. I mean, that's pretty deep, but I think it was probably even deeper. And if you look at some of the weapons down there, they look pretty gnarly, so I wouldn't want anyone attacking me with that. But they willingly gave up their weapons of war, their way of defense, because they believed God would most love them and do this. And it's quite interesting that they did that. They removed their temptation in an effort to overcome sin. So when we covenant with God and Jesus, what kind of things do we bury? Like, this can be used to teach, like, what do we bury? What do we take and do we bury deep? Not that it might be shiny, but that it can be a testimony to God, literally, that we've never done that, or we're never going to use that, or do it again, or use it again. And that avoids that temptation and that sin. I think for me, being an alcoholic, but I've been clean for, I can't even count the years anymore. I just sort of, it's been that long. I don't need to count them anymore to be how proud I am of keeping that. I could figure it out. I think it's 38, no, 20, 32 years, I think. We go to 94, 30 years. 29 years. 29 years it'll be this year. There you go. Early morning math, people, come on. 29 years it'll be this year, and it's incredible. It's over half my life. To me, I couldn't literally bury the alcohol because I didn't have any left, which is a good thing. I did have some left when I moved, and I way back when I was giving up. And I tipped it out on the way to get some help as I was walking. And the only people I knew at that time that were talking to me were the missionaries who were trying to encourage me to come back to church. So as I was walking to their flat, which I know you're not supposed to do, but like, what else am I going to do, And they called the bishop, and the bishop came around as well. But I didn't have the bishop's number. I didn't have any of that. So I just knew where they lived. And I just knew that I needed to get help because it was a weak moment and I had forgotten that I'd had this alcohol, but I tipped it out on the way over. And it just, to never go back and use that, and it doesn't mean to say I haven't committed sin again, but that was one thing that I really wanted to give up with a passion, to really show as a testimony to Christ and to God that I was not going to do that again. So to bury that deep down, in recent years I've been able to have alcohol or be around alcohol and not feel the need for it. But there are times when I do still get that physical craving, and I've got to be very careful where I'm at, what positions I put myself in. So this is a really good example of how they remove that temptation. For a while I couldn't go anywhere that had alcohol because I wanted to keep myself shiny and bright as a testimony that I was not going to do that anymore. And I lost some very precious to me spiritual gifts in the time that I was drinking, and in the last 10 years they've started to come back. There was a long time there where they didn't, and they started to come back. So in the last sort of 10 to 15 years they've sort of slowly leaked back in, and I would say even grown. So the blessings are there. But what are you going to bury like that? What are you getting rid of or banishing from your life And some things are hard because you have to literally be around them sometimes. If you live in a place where your family drinks or does drugs and that's the only place you've got to live, how are you going to keep yourself from that? Some very good ways to talk about. It'd be a great conversation to have with your friends if you're doing Come Follow Me with that, with your ward members or branch members, maybe even with your bishop, Relief Society president. I don't know. There's a lot of good people out there that will help you. You may have a neighbour that isn't a member at all, that isn't even Christian, but you say, hey, when they start drinking and I want to do that, can I come stay at your place next door? And they might say, yeah, sure you can. Just crash on the couch. I don't know what it's like in different countries. I know that in New Zealand you could probably do that with your neighbours. They're pretty good people at that. But they remove their temptation and effort to overcome sin. So what can we do to look at that? So when we covenant with God and Jesus, what kind of things do we bury? In verses 20, in chapter 24, verse 12, we also see the term best beloved. So let's just quickly read it. It just says at the beginning there, now my best beloved brethren, since God hath taken away our stains and our swords have become bright, then let us stain our swords no more with the blood of our brethren. As in, let's not commit this sin anymore. Let's not commit these sins anymore. So how does that affect you as well in the way that you have? I don't think that you've got a sword going around stabbing people. But what do you have? Have you got a sharp-edged sword tongue that goes around stabbing people? Is there, road rage you need to work on? Because I got that. I got to work on that. So, there's things there. But you see the term best beloved. And beloved is desired of God to be loved. So they're wonderful people. They surrounded themselves with supportive covenant-keeping people who are yours. That's what they did, best beloved. Who are your covenant-keeping people? They stayed there together. We see that in verse 17 and 18. We see that they surrounded themselves with those kind of people. Now, over in 25, which again is pretty short, same sort of thing, and it does tie in with the same themes, but 14 through 17 of chapter 25, we see many slain in keeping their promise to God. So the Lamanites come against them and they won't fight. And they just say, no, we would rather die. And I can honestly say if someone said to me, you need to drink this alcohol or we're going to kill you, I'd be like, then kill me, because I'm not breaking that promise to God. I made that one. He's saved me. He's given me a lot of blessings to overcome it. I'm not going to ruin it by that. And a lot of people would say, well, that's silly. And you could look at this and go, well, you should fight back. Look after yourselves. And at first when I read this many years ago, I'm like, why didn't you fight back? But now I get it. If you've made that covenant to God and that covenant is true to you, I would rather go back to God having kept my promise than not. And that's the kind of person I want to be. I want to keep my promises to those people I have here on earth, and I'll keep my promises to God and to Jesus. So we can learn from that righteous example. That righteous example is a powerful thing, because if you read through 14 through 17, you see that they buried their weapons of war according as their brethren had. This is the people that attacked them. They were like, oh my gosh, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to bury our weapons as well. And we're going to keep the law of Moses. But we know that the law of Moses isn't everything. This is verse 15. It's just looking forward to the coming of Christ. Christ is going to give us something better, but we better learn to keep the law of Moses first. And 16, they knew that salvation wasn't going to come by Moses. They knew it was going to come by Christ. But they were like, again, let's keep this thing. Let's keep this kind of, live to never fall away behavior. And then in 17, Ammon, Aaron, Omna, and Himni, they did rejoice that many had, joined their cause and joined the church as such, even though a lot of people died. But they died keeping their covenants. So it's interesting. So we can learn that righteous example is a powerful thing, even though there's much death here. What good comes from this situation? There's a good topic to talk about. So there's a lot of death in there. What good comes from the situation? Now, the next chapter is Alma 26, and we see Ammon just glorifying God in the most beautiful way. The Lord in the most beautiful way as well. And it's one of the better, my favourite chapters ever. So we're going to go look at that, but, don't just look at the death, look at what good comes out of it, and keeping covenants, and to what extent would you go to keep covenants? How much do they actually mean to you? If you've made those with Heavenly Father, how much do they mean to you? Because we're not perfect at keeping them. I've broken some and had to repent, but I want to keep them. So think about that. All right, good discussion. I'll see you soon for insight number 3.